years, dedicated to dramatic exploration of the African American experience. Under his leadership, Penumbra has produced 25 world premieres, including August Wilson's first professional production, and is proud to have produced more of Mr. Wilson's plays than any theater in the world. An Obie Award-winning director, an accomplished actor, and sought-after scholar, he holds a master's degree in theater from the University of Minnesota, where he was a member of the faculty for 33 years. This past December, he was interviewed and featured on the national NBC News program, Rock Center with Brian Williams. Please welcome Lou Bellamy.
I'm happy to be one of the first to publicly congratulate you for having the temerity to develop, widen, and contextualize your talent with the intellectual dimensions that have been part of your education at St. Paul Conservatory for Performing Artists. And although you have been the principal architects of your artistic and intellectual development, every artist in this graduating class has a support system without which we very well might not be here today celebrating. Parents and extended families should be congratulated as well for their role in making this day possible. Investing in arts education and the work that it produces is perceived by many to be supporting a navel-gazing, selfish, non-practical, murky, frivolous, low dividend-paying, and elite experience at best. At worst, words like iconoclastic, antisocial, sacrilegious, vulgar, even pornographic, egotistical, and worthless tend to creep into conversations. And these criticisms often go farther and reflect on the artist as well as the art. There seems to be something about the time dedicated to dreaming and contemplation that we all know to be part of the artistic and creative process that is, well, insulting to some people. I can only surmise that it has something to do with this thinking activity being viewed as laziness or non-productive because its causal link to the product may be sometimes months or even years away. I remember teaching a graduate class in Black theater history a few years ago. One of the students' father, a very successful attorney, was visiting his son and decided to sit in on a class and see what his hard-earned dollars spent on his son's art education was actually buying. The class had been assigned several plays written in the 1920s by black women addressing the pressing issues of their time. Angelina Weld Grimke and Georgia Douglas Johnson were, in their plays, exploring the physical and psychological effects of the intimidation visited upon the black family by vigilantism and its most terroristic manifestation, lynching. Alice Dunbar Nelson and Mary Burrell were making a call for female liberation with their poignant and instructive representations of female lives and families destroyed by misinformation concerning birth control, poverty, and lack of access to education. We had just finished a quite spirited and informed conversation that concerned itself with the way in which the play's subject matter provided a peek into the thinking that led to anti-lynching legislation and eventually the civil rights and feminist movements. It was then with a degree of positive anticipation that I waited after class for comment from our visiting lawyer. I was sure he would have observed in the discussion the manner in which art can lead, inform, and shape public discourse. He simply shook his head and said in a somewhat, I I still don't know quite how to describe it, a pitying tone. You people really think you're doing something with these plays, don't you? I stood there dumbfounded and finally managed to stammer out a reply, yes, we do. So let me repeat on this 23rd day of May in the year 2012, yes, we do. In fact, those artists with whom I'm most comfortable creating work are those who view their art as simply an extension of themselves. To these artists, the making of art isn't some separate or special activity. It is who they are. I'm asked more often than one would think, in a rather suspicious and questioning manner, what is it exactly that you do as an artistic director? I finally found the courage to answer simply that I live life, and I don't mean prophylactically. I try to be a lightning rod for my community. I feel the need to be well informed about local, national, and international issues. I try to understand, if not share, the human conditions of loss, suffering, joy, rapture, depression, love, and wonder. My job is to be a human being and then to express that humanity. The medium of expression that I have spent my life becoming proficient in is theater. It is the way I express my thoughts, my feelings, my citizenships, and in many ways, my vote. I prefer to think of art not as a passive activity, but rather, as Bertolt Brecht described, not as a mirror that we hold up to society, but rather as a hammer and anvil we use to change it. This way of viewing the world, artist as citizen, art as life, requires, as does any discipline, continued study, application, and more than a modicum of courage. The courage to be introspective, and the courage to follow one's heart. In the final analysis, that's all any of us do. We look inside of ourselves and follow our heart. A good friend of mine, who happened to be a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, August Wilson, was fond of saying that we are what we imagine ourselves to be, and we can only imagine that which is possible. What this means is that the act of thinking, imagining, is seminal to the process of being. That the time spent in the creative process for rumination, for serious or even frivolous contemplation, for listening to our hearts, for finding our muse, okay, just for dreaming, isn't wasted, but is actually work for the artist. And you must have the courage to do that work. There's another kind of courage you must cultivate, and that is the courage to fail. Now, one person's failure, of course, might be another person's success. But here's what I mean by failure in an artistic context. The production simply of bad art. Art that is cliche-ridden, banal, obvious, silly, ugly, not worth the paper it's scribbled on, the cloth it's made of, or the breath it took to mouth. We've all produced it. But let me say unequivocally, no idea is wasted. It may very well be simply be a step along the way towards something quite wonderful. Again, the career of August Wilson might be instructive. Several years ago, August wrote a one-act play called The Homecoming. It was about two men who played musical instruments and sang blues, and who were waiting at a train station for the casket holding their dear friend who was to arrive from a big city up north. Their friend had frozen to death outside of a recording studio while waiting to get royalty payment for a song he recorded that had become a hit. While these two were waiting, they began to lazily strum a guitar and play a mouth organ. A passing carpetbagger type notices the two and attempts to get them to play their song for his recording box. The two trick the would-be thief of their music into a line shack, nail the door shut, and leave him presumably to die as they exited Play's End, carrying the coffin containing the body of their dead friend. Now the plot is rather obvious, the premise preposterous, the denouement strained at best. 8 or 10 years later, however, August returned to this theme, that is, the unscrupulous brokering of black music in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and established himself as a major American playwright by winning a Pulitzer Prize. Whenever I think of bad, or if you will, unsuccessful art, I can't help but think of Harold Klarman, director of the 1930s Actors Studio in New York. Now this collective was responsible for developing a particularly gritty and socially conscious art typified by the plays of Clifford Odets. Anyway, I remember a film of him being interviewed. And this great director, then a fragile and very old man, ranting and raving with his finger in the air, actually screaming, "I love bad plays. Give me more bad plays. Give me thousands of bad plays, because I know that out of all these bad plays will come one good play." So as Winston Churchill said, you never, never give up. Never, never. Please stay at your art through all the sometimes depressing introspection, through the challenges to life and heart that tend to make one timid, through all the criticism from those who will continually push for answers concerning what it is that you actually do. Because both the expected and the unexpected consequences of living a life in art, of making art one of the integrative forces in your life, already has and will continue to shape you for the rest of your lives. Certainly when asked if you really think you're doing something with this art thing, you'll answer, yes,